Hello everyone, welcome to my channel. In this session we will create a SQL Server Availability Group cluster on top of this failover cluster, okay, Windows failover cluster. So in the previous session we created this Windows failover cluster, right? You can see I have two nodes now. I will create SQL Server Availability Group cluster by using these replicas, okay? So I have this SQL VM1 and SQL VM2, right? These nodes, okay? Now let's create availability group cluster. For this, first of all, I will enable availability group feature for my SQL Server. Okay, properties, go to always on high availability groups and enable. Click apply. Okay, now you can see we should restart. Right click and restart. Let's do the same for our secondary replica. Configuration. Okay, properties. Here. Apply and click OK. Click OK. Right click and restart. Now our SQL Server has availability group feature, right? Availability group cluster feature. So next thing you should consider about is account. So Microsoft recommends you use the same account for both primary and secondary. But it is not necessary. You can of course configure different accounts for both primary and secondary. Like in my case, I have primary replica account and secondary replica account. Okay, so I prefer this one. Okay, but as best practice, you had better configure only one account. Okay, so let's now start building availability group. We just go to SSMS and click this one and open also SSMS in my secondary. Click OK. Okay. Let's log into the primary, right? So if you expand always on high availability, you cannot see any kind of cluster. So let's try to create a cluster. Right click, new availability group wizard, click next, and insert your availability group name. Okay, cluster AG test. You can see cluster type. If you drop down, you can see three types of cluster types: Windows Server Failover Cluster, External, and None. I will choose Windows Server Failover Cluster because if you choose this one, SQL Server will use this available Windows Failover Cluster. Okay, I have this cluster and I want to use this one. Other options like External and None, it is for the case where you cannot create Windows failover cluster. For example, you might have primary site and secondary site servers, right? And for that servers, they are in different domains and you cannot create failover cluster. For that kind of situations, you can use external. Or there is another case, let's say Linux, right? You want to configure a cluster between the Linux and Windows. For that kind of situations, you can use None or external. Okay. So since I have already Windows failover cluster, I choose this option. Click next. And now you can see I should select the database, but I cannot select. Why? Let me show you. So for this, I will just create new database. Okay, and call it test database and click OK. Okay, already exists. It is saying, oh, okay. Let's say test database 2. Let's make it test database 2. Okay. Now I want to add this database to availability group, but there are pre-requirements. Okay. First of all, there recovery mode of this database should be full. Okay, it's already full. You should make it full. This is the first requirement. Second requirement, you should take full backup from this database. Backup, take full, right? This location and click OK. Now I have taken full backup. After these two requirements, your database becomes ready. Okay, go back again and refresh. Now we can select this database. Why you cannot select other database? You can see here full recovery mode is required. Okay, it means we did not enable full recovery for this database, and full backup is required, it is saying here. So it means that we did not take full backup from this database. Okay, and etc. So therefore, if you want to add database to availability group, just make the recovery mode to full and take full backup. Otherwise, you cannot add. Click next. Now add replica, and let's add secondary replica to our cluster. Okay, we added. And then initial role is primary. I'm making this primary and this server as secondary. Automatic failover, let's make it available, and seeding mode synchronous. And readable, let's make it readable secondary. So you might ask, what are this automatic failover, availability mode, readable secondary, right? So I'll explain this in the next session. So for now, just understand that there are such kind of features while creating availability group. Okay, do not go deep now. Okay, now click on endpoints. Okay, endpoint. What is this endpoint, right? First of all, endpoint, it is some kind of a point where primary and secondary exchange data. Okay, so primary, for example, this is primary, right? This primary is sending to secondary is this port number. Okay, this port number 5022, and secondary is sending synchronized data to this primary. Okay, this here. Okay, so 5022, it is the synchronization point where replicas exchange synchronized data. Okay, this is synchronization port. So therefore, you should open this port in your firewall. Do not close it. Otherwise, your synchronization will fail and your cluster cannot operate. So we call this as HIDR endpoint. Okay. So, okay. And one more thing, encrypt data. You can see that, right? It is automatically enabled. So it means that synchronization between synchronized data between primary and the secondary is being encrypted. Okay. Now backup preferences, prefer secondary and secondary only primary. You have different options. Okay, I prefer secondary for backup. And the listener, I do not create listener now, and I do not set read-only routing now. We will do this step by step in the next sessions. Okay, just now understand that there are this kind of settings while you create availability group cluster. Okay, click next, and automatic initial data synchronization, right? Seeding, it is just the initial synchronization start. Okay, in what way you want to initialize your synchronization? I choose automatic seeding. There are other options: full database backup, join only, skip data synchronization, right? So I will have also different session for this initial synchronization. For now, just we will select automatic seeding, okay, and we will go deeper in the next sessions for what is this, what is join only, how to use this, and when to use them, right? We will talk about. Next. Okay, everything is going well. Next, and click finish. Okay, now our cluster is being created. Click close. You can see now our cluster, right? With 2 replicas and availability database. Okay, in order to see the status of our cluster, we go to dashboard and open it. Okay, now you can see healthy status, right? Our cluster is in healthy status, and synchronization is very much good. You can see green light, right? And this one is primary, and this one is secondary. Availability synchronous, right? Other settings you can see. And here you can see database names and whether they are synchronized or not. Okay, synchronized means that all of your data is synchronized and you are not facing any kind of data loss. If this becomes like error not synchronizing, it means that you have a problem with your synchronization. So you should investigate. Okay, so if you refresh the databases, you can see synchronized. Okay, you can also see the same status from here. So now our cluster is ready and very much healthy. Let's test failover to the secondary. Okay. Let's also log into secondary and see the same, right? You can also see from secondary side the same synchronized database. Okay. And if you expand here, okay, replicas and database, and here you can see status as secondary, right? Primary was primary, right? So now let's make this replica as secondary and this replica as primary, right? For this we do failover. Right click failover, click OK to this replica. Let's connect to secondary. Okay, click finish. Okay, it is in progress. Now failover succeeded, right? Click close. Now you can see that our primary became secondary and secondary became primary, right? Refresh. As you can see, the status changed, right? Now, so in the session we created availability group cluster and we tested failover. Now I believe you became a little bit more confident in creating availability group and how to do failover, right? In the next session, we will dive more deeper and try to understand these properties of availability group, like synchronization mode, right? And endpoint and session timeout, right? I will explain what are these and how to configure them. Okay? Thank you for your time.